It's good to have you join us on the program tonight. Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory, the FCT Abuja, appears to have become a hotbed of criminal activity, and including armed robbery, kidnapping, robbers on wheels, or what we call in local parlance, one chance. We have carjacking. These are making the residents of Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory worried about the noticeable resurgence of insecurity in the seat of Nigeria's federal government. Now, this development in the FCT has left some Nigerians questioning the implication of this on the entire country, because this is Nigeria's capital we're talking about, where the three-arm zone of the government exists. We're talking about the seat of Nigeria's executive, that's the president, the seat of Nigeria's legislature, that's the National Assembly, where you have the Senate and the House of Representatives. And you have the seat of Nigeria's judiciary, the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, is domiciled in Abuja, Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory, as well as the headquarters of Nigeria's security architecture, all based in Abuja. Now, let's recall that Nigerian President Bola Tinubu, when he was sworn in on Monday, May 29, 2023, taking over from former President Muhammadu Bwari, pledged to prioritize security. Bola Ahmed Tinubu said, and I quote, "Security shall be the top priority of our administration, because neither prosperity nor justice can prevail amidst insecurity and violence." He also said, while taking his oath of office on that day in his speech, to effectively tackle this menace, we shall reform both our security doctrine and its architecture. Our security doctrine and its architecture. The president vowed in that inaugural speech. Now, yesterday, Monday, there was a development in Abuja following the recent spate of kidnappings. You know the story of a family of 7 who were kidnapped, and then, of course, they now were reduced to 6 after one was released. Well, yesterday, there was a development in Abuja. There was a press conference by the Commissioner for Public Complaints Commission, who represents the Abuja FCT, because we have representatives for each state, Hon Ezekiel Musa Dalhatu. Now, he said that the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, has not been properly briefed on the high level of insecurity in the nation's capital. This is an official of the Public Complaints Commission. Now, according to him, 176 people were reportedly abducted by bandits across Kuje, Kwali, and Bwari area councils of the Federal Capital Territory under 2 months. The commissioner also said that residents of communities in Abaji, Kwali, Gwagwalada, Kuje, and Bwari area councils in Abuja South are living in fear due to incessant cases of banditry and kidnapping. Now, we know the story, one that has broken the internet, of a family kidnapped from their home in Bwari Area Council of Abuja. The gunmen from God knows where picked up a father and his 6 daughters, including a young lady identified as Najiba, a teenage daughter of this man who works for the federal government, a federal government agency. They released the father so he could go raise the ransom money of 60 million, which later became 70 million. You can see the father there and his children. Unfortunately, whilst they went on the internet, especially on X and Facebook, to try and do a crowdfunding to raise money from Nigerians to donate into the bank account, not enough money was gathered as at Friday. So consequently, these criminals who kidnapped the 7 of them, father you're seeing there, and his 6 daughters, including Najiba, these hoodlums killed a teenager, Najiba, in cold blood, all right, in cold blood, and dumped her body and told the parents to go to that location to pick her body and bury her, just because they couldn't raise that amount of 60 million naira, which later became 70 million naira. Now, we are hearing that the sisters of Najiba, now 5 of them, the abductors are asking for 700 million naira. Of course, probably they're seeing what's going on Twitter, okay? And they've decided to raise it up to 700 million naira. Of course, the Nigeria Police Force has said they're going to release these girls. I don't know if that has happened whilst I was preparing for the program. But our guest tonight on the program to do justice to the topic of insecurity, this conversation on insecurity in Nigeria's federal capital, we have Dr. Yahuza Getso. He's a security intelligence professional who'll be joining us via video link very soon. We have also Chris Olaoluwa Ogobodede. He is an international affairs analyst. He joins us via Zoom from Lagos. It's a privilege to have you, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. Chris, this recurring, very worrying reports of insecurity in Nigeria's federal capital territory is given, of course, the residents cause for concern, including the authorities who are based there. We know about the lady who died as a result of one chance. We had a lot of uproar. We know what happened with the attack on the brigade's guard. There was a lot of uproar. Remember what happened with the attack on Kuje prisons? There was a lot of uproar. I want your reaction to this latest one. A family of 7, a father and his 6 daughters were kidnapped. And one of those daughters, Najiba, a teenager, was murdered by these kidnappers in cold blood and a body dumped on the streets of Abuja. Now they're asking for 700 million naira. What's your reaction to this particular one?
Yes, it's the unfortunate latest example of the utter breakdown of law and order, for one thing, but just more broadly, peace and security in Abuja specifically, where this crime happened, but more broadly across the country. I mean, Abuja is a place where many, including residents of the FCT and its surrounding areas, have long thought to be relatively safe and insulated from some of the worst examples of criminality and violent crime and the broader disturbance of peace and security in Nigeria. But for quite a long time, that perception has been somewhat misplaced, and this is something I've often talked about in public forums. I've written about the fact that for quite a long time, Abuja has not been as safe as people thought it was. In the 2010s, we had the several bombings. There was the bombing at the UN headquarters. There were the bombings in Nyanya. There was the bombing in Wuse Market. There's a bombing in Wuse Market. There have also been many, as you described earlier in the segment, one chance attacks, violent crimes, robberies in places like Nikon Junction, AY, Banex Junction, and more so in these surrounding areas, like in Bwari, where this crime happened. So it's the perception that Abuja has been insulated from these attacks, unfortunately, has not been entirely true. And it's the tragic reminder that that perception is not entirely as it seems, unfortunately, has had to be this instance. It's just a further reminder to Nigerians that everything that we read about, that we hear about happening in seemingly far away places can come to, our own localities, whether it be in Abuja, whether it be here in Lagos, or indeed these other parts of the country that many in Abuja and Lagos and big cities like that have long thought to be, that's where those things happen, but they don't happen here.
How did Nigeria's federal capital, which hosts the seat of power in Nigeria, which one would assume or think should be the most secure piece of real estate in this country, excuse me, please. How did Nigeria's seat of power become so insecure? Because you've said that what we hear, or the perception that Nigeria's capital, Abuja, is so secure is not the reality. And you said it's not even a recent development. It's been like that over the past years. How did such a federal capital? We know that Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida left Lagos to go to Abuja, which was already being built from the days of Shagari, as Nigeria's new federal capital from scratch because Lagos was too hot and there were some assassination attempts on him. How did Abuja move from that to this?
As you allude to, it's been a gradual process. As you rightly pointed out, General Ibrahim Babangida moved the capital to Abuja in 1991, although the plans had been in earnest in place since the 1970s. And when people think of Abuja, you think of its security, as you say, it's the seat of the government, it's where political power resides. And when you drive around the city, you'll find military bases, there's a National Defense College, the police headquarters are there, the Department of State Security. It's the entire theater of Nigerian security architecture quite literally resides in Abuja. So it's not unreasonable for Nigerians and residents of Abuja to think of it as somewhere that should, in theory, be safe from these attacks. The reality is that security theater does not necessarily equal effective policing, effective law enforcement, the effective protection of lives and property. When you think of the many difficulties faced by the Nigerian security services, whether it be logistics, whether it be manpower, whether it be morale, Abuja is not immune from any of these things. And the fact that the lack of effective policing, especially in the surrounding areas where the majority of people in the area around the FCT actually live. We who know Abuja well, and as well as those who live in Abuja, will know that the amount of people who live in the city is actually small relative to those who live in places like Abaji, Gwagwalada, and all of these many places outside of town. So the fact that those places have long suffered from insecurity and a lack of meaningful and effective policing is simply, it's a case of the chickens coming home to roost. When you look at the lack of economic opportunities, the lack of policing, the lack of, what an urban municipal area should look like in terms of providing of goods and goods and services, including security, you can see that Abuja has not been, that Abuja lacks so many of that infrastructure. So if those areas around the FCT, including places like Nasarawa, Niger, Kaduna, lack that effective policing, it's not so surprised that eventually the consequences of that lack of policing and lack of effective security architecture will spill over into Abuja, and that's what we see. But more specifically, when it comes to this menace of kidnapping, it speaks to how much it's become, frankly, an economy of itself. Kidnapping, again, isn't new to Nigeria, but what is new is the penetration of technology, and the penetration of the ability to raise money,
right.
As you mentioned, how the
right.
family of the
okay.
victims were trying to raise money.
Chris, I'm sorry to interject here. We'll come back from a commercial break. We want to look at more of the whys, especially as it has to do with Nigeria's security architecture. And I'll have some questions I want to ask you. We'll take a commercial. We'll be right back. We have more conversations ahead on Politics HQ. Welcome back. We're still talking security or insecurity in Nigeria's federal capital territory, Abuja, following recent spate of kidnappings, abductions, and robberies in that city that have got the residents of Abuja worried. And we want to know what this means for Nigeria's safety and security territorially. We had Chris Olaoluwa Ogunmodede, international affairs analyst, joining us earlier via video link, and I'm glad to say we have joining us now Dr. Yahuza Getso. He's a security intelligence professional. Dr. Getso, thank you so very kindly for your time tonight.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
Yes, Dr. Getso, I asked your counterpart on the program tonight, I'm going to ask you, how did we go from the day when IBB moved to Abuja because he wanted a more safe environment to work as president to what we have today, which is insecurity, kidnapping, abduction, robbery, hijacking, carjacking in Abuja, and even assassination?
Well, I don't think it has any administrative or political linkage. It is rather the inability of the management of the security to kind of take the necessary measures. Because the security challenges is not peculiar or not really in Abuja, it is all over the country in the six geopolitical zones, not really during the IBB, or rather during the Abacha or during even Abdisalam Abubakar towards the time of Obasanjo. Most of these insecurity challenges in the Federal Capital Territory started much as the tail end of the days of Olusegun Obasanjo, and later during the time of Umar Musa Yar'Adua, to some extent of kind of enlarging to the situation of the current trend during the days of President Muhammadu Bwari and that of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And as far as I'm concerned, it has no, professionally I'm talking, it has no linkage whatsoever to do with the geography, but rather it has a kind of a linkage to do with a situation in the country. The president's kind of the system that have the issues of kidnapping, northwest, northeast, north central, and northwest also. And particularly Abuja or any relationship with any relationship with relocation of the Federal Capital Territory from Lagos to Abuja. It has nothing to do with that. It has no political, no administrative, and no geographical linkage. But it is just situational, because the current situation that we have had in the last 12 to 13 years, we used to have the emergence of this kidnapping, pocket of it, in some state of Zamfara and Katsina, which is escalating now to most part of north central and northwest, as well as northeastern part of the country, as well as the southwest. So now, looking into what is happening in Abuja, there are several reasons to kind of justify why we are having these issues. One of which, inability of the government itself, the competition between the security agencies, which is making it very difficult for them to have a synergy so that they can be able to work together towards realizing the harmonious kind of a working relationship in order to attend to these issues. And I want to tell you, I have been talking about all these kidnappings and all this criminal and criminality based on the survey I have conducted between the year 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021 in almost all the neighborhoods, the 6 neighborhood states of the Federal Capital Territory, and I will give reasons with justifications. Some of these areas related to Abuja neighborhood with Niger, neighborhood with Kogi, neighborhood with Nasarawa, neighborhood with Kaduna State, and neighborhood with Plateau State to some extent, simply because of the kind of high level of rural-urban migration. And there is no really arrangement, organized arrangement, for the government to register each and everybody who is coming to Abuja, why he or she or they are coming to Abuja, and for what reason, and what are really the they are doing, and kind of that is one. Secondly, all the security agencies are being understaffed. I want to tell you that either the Nigerian Army, the Nigerian Air Force, and the Nigerian Navy, Nigerian Police, as well as the Civil Defense and the DSS, all of them are understaffed. They don't have adequate staff to manage the FCT, and they don't have adequate staff to manage everywhere, including Lagos, including Port Harcourt, including Kano, and everywhere. The total number of personnel that we have in all the security agencies is not up to 20% of the required security personnel that are supposed to have to be manning the all the areas, not only in the FCT. And the FCT is not kind of isolated. So everywhere you have, there are no adequate personnel. In each divisional police office, police station that's in Nigeria, in 773 local governments that we have in Nigeria, I want to tell you honestly and sincerely with data-based research, and I want to speak based on the data, based on the information, that there is no divisional police station that can be able to cover up to 10% of what it requires to cover. So as such, all the agencies are understaffed. So the kidnapping in Abuja, it has three kind of diagonal relationship. One, it's a geographical disadvantage. in terms of having a number of mountains that have no personnel to manage it. Two, negligence and sabotage from within the system of the services, because they have not been doing what they're supposed to do. They don't have personnel and they are not working in harmony. So each Nigerian army is not seeing the Nigerian Air Force as an agency on it, as a partner agency. So rather there is this rivalry between agencies is really not really helping the situation. And number four, there is no communication arrangement or organized communication system between the security agencies in order to digest and manage the situation appropriately and in accordance with what it is. And five, the Federal Capital Territory Administration have no kind of organized security system whereby it is using to operate, it doesn't even have a clear definition, clear policy on security, and it doesn't even have a clear roadmap of where really the administration is going. So the level of confusion made it very difficult for any inhabitant to understand what is really the reason why we are having this.
All right, Dr. Getso, you said a lot. Yeah, Dr. Getso, you said a lot. Yeah, I'll come back to you. You said quite a lot. I want to bring Chris back on the program, back in focus, Chris Ogumodede. Dr. Getso has said quite a lot. We have to look at this from the perspective, or to look at this look at the federal government and also look at the FCT administration. I'm glad he brought that up. But looking at Nigeria's federal security architecture, Chris Ogumodede, do we need a comprehensive review of security? Because he said that we don't have enough men in any of the security agencies, especially the police, to do the job of securing the area, the division. And some of the people in your space have argued that the Nigerian military has no business going after armed robbers, kidnappers, and so on and so forth, that should be the job of the police, that the Nigerian army or the Nigerian military should be focused on protecting the borders of Nigeria and also protecting Nigeria from every external aggression. So what are your thoughts on this? I want you to talk about this vis-a-vis what Mr. President said in his inaugural speech, where he says that he said that he shall reform the Nigerian security doctrine and architecture. Was that just a speech, or did he mean it? Chris.
Well, regardless of what the president intended, if he meant it or not, I think that it's the review and reform of the Nigerian security architecture is long overdue. It was long overdue 10 years ago, frankly speaking. It was long overdue 20 years ago for that matter. But it certainly is long overdue for reform today. As my fellow guest said correctly, I would argue that even if all of the security agencies were willing and able to fulfill the mandate bestowed upon them, they simply can't, for capacity reasons as well as other reasons, financial, logistic, the credibility reasons. They struggle with being regarded by ordinary citizens as, working for them. We all know the old saying, "Oh, police is your friend," that we grew up hearing. Many Nigerians simply do not believe that for a range of reasons. So I personally am of the view that the Nigerian armed forces have no business in policing and law enforcement, but because of, for one thing, decades of military rule, the continued defenestration of policing and law enforcement agencies meant that somebody had to fill a void. Nature abhors a vacuum, because the Nigerian police couldn't do so much, or was weakened deliberately, I would argue, by decades of military rule. The armed forces came to assume responsibilities that they frankly should not have. And we can see the consequences today. The armed forces deal with everything from traffic control here in Lagos to protecting waterways in the Niger Delta, the Nigerian Navy. The army forms part of the election security on election day. For every, budgeting, for instance, in the public sector is effectively a zero. In fact, it's completely zero sum. when you take and put into one area, that means another area does not get, simply because resources are not infinite. So for everything the Nigerian armed forces are made to do outside of their core duty, something and someone will suffer. So reforming of the architecture, to me, is, a no-brainer. The question is, how do you do that? Because the question of how to do that then speaks to, frankly, a political debate that goes beyond the presidency, because a reform of the architecture is not something that a Nigerian president can do alone. It's got to be codified into law, but then that gets into the National Assembly. That also gets into questions of federalism. That gets into questions of quote unquote restructuring. To what extent should the police be federalized, or if at all should it be federalized? There aren't any straightforward answers to these questions. And for many people, for many security professionals, for many of those who are used to thinking of the security architecture in one way, all of these questions are ones they might find uncomfortable, certainly for the political class, which bemoans the lack of security in Abuja, the perception, and inaccurately, as I've described, that Abuja is some epicenter of renewed violence. They might say so, but when the question of actually how do we reform the security architecture to make it reflective of modern conditions is put on the table, that's going to be a different ballgame entirely, because that requires making tough and painful decisions that many politicians are loath to make. So I do agree that overhauling the status quo is a no-brainer. There is no option in my view. The question is, to what extent is that politically feasible? And we talk about political will. Does the political class in Abuja and in state capitals across the country, because I'd be remiss not to point out that this is not something that can be done in a top-down manner. It's got to be all-encompassing of the federal government as well as state government, because ultimately there are federated units, 36 of them across the country, that should be carried on, to use a common path.
Okay. Chris, thank you very much. Dr. Ezekiel, so we know the issues. We've had a lot of conversations regarding insecurity in Nigeria. During the 2023, and I'm going to go over to the military shortly, but during the 2023 elections, I made a vow to myself. I said I will not discuss any topic about insecurity, because I saw, various incidences of violence carried out on behalf of politicians, at different levels of elections, at state level, legislative, national level, federal, and all that. And the question I asked myself was, if there are people, hoodlums, thugs, who are fomenting violence to help a politician win an election, how do I expect a politician who relied on creating insecurity to win an election to now provide Nigerians with security? So, gentlemen, are we not wasting our time? Really, the problem of insecurity in Nigeria is the same problem with healthcare, the same problem with education, the same problem with infrastructure. Neglect. Neglect. The people who are meant to tend to that farm, to nurture the country, taking the eyes off governance and are looking at the politics and the money. So, I mean, what are we talking about here? You mentioned political will, Chris. I'm going to come to Dr. Ezekiel. Can you give what you don't have? If you rely on questionable characters, on criminals, on thugs who foment insecurity in different parts of the country, I'm not talking about one person, to help you win an election, how do you expect that same person to come and secure you, the country? Dr. Getso, what's your thinking on this?
Well, thank you very much. I keep asking myself this question, and I keep asking this question to other intellectuals. During the process of electioneering in the 2023, and that of 2019, and that of 2015, and that of 2011, and that of 2007, and that of 2003, 2007, 2003, and that of 1999, politicians have been moving around all the political wards, all the nooks and crannies to conduct their campaign. And at worst, even during the 2023, we had we move around all parts of the country. Dr. Abi Musa Konkoso move around all parts of the country. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu went around all parts of the country, Atiku Abubakar and the like. All the contenders of the House of Representatives and that of our State Assembly, and even the local government chairman contenders, they move around all locations, all hard to reach and difficult terrain and areas where kidnappings for ransom and all other criminalities are taking place, but none was ever hurt. So does that mean it's a kind of a connivance? Does that mean is it an organized crime between the politicians and the criminals who are conducting the
Dr. Get, so
because we have not had anybody among those who were campaigning that was ever chased in Zamfara, rather in Katsina, no in Niger, no in Kaduna, and all part of it. And at the same time, I have said it without number, that the total number of the kidnappers that we have in all the 9 states of the north central and that of northwestern part of the country, inclusive of the northeastern part of the country, they are not up to 3,000. I have done the profiling them by political ward, by polling unit, by political ward, by local government, and by state. And I made my submission. And all of them I said, and I keep repeating myself, I said it yesterday, I said the day before yesterday, that if government is not aware of where these guys are, I know where they are. And the traditional leaders, and as well as the religious leaders and all other inhabitants living in those areas where they are conducting this criminality, know who are really the criminals, and we know their hideouts, and we know if there is any difficult terrain. Why can't you collaborate with us and other public personalities who are working day and night with vigilance and civilian JTF, as well as others who really know the ground, who really know the forest, who really know the terrain, who really know the geography very well, in order to deal with this issue decisively and finish it. I believe so much that we have very gallant officers, we are very hardworking, very dedicated.
So, Dr. Get, so it means that, contrary to what you said earlier, I know what you said was true, that we don't have, if you look at the population of Nigeria, even look at the police divisions, we don't have enough police officers to per population. Even in some police divisions, they have closed down because of insecurity, southeast, south. But you're saying that if you look at these criminals, those ones who are the bandits, the kidnappers and all that they are not more than 3,000. Are you including Boko Haram and ISWAP and the terrorists in the northeast and northwest?
I said northwest. I didn't say northeast.
Okay, northwest.
And I'm talking about kidnapping only. I'm not talking about ISWAP and Boko Haram.
Okay.
And these guys, the kidnappers, are in 9 states of northwest and north central. There are preferred in some areas in northeastern part of the country, that was Bauchi and Gombe. There are pockets of kidnapping that have that area. But the whole of the kidnap and the kingpin of the kidnappers are known, and 99.9% of them are Nigerians. 99% of them, we know their locations, we know who they are, we know where they are. And I want to tell you, in every one of the 773 local governments that we have in Nigeria, we have primary security personnel or agencies that are permanently there. You have DSS, you have civil defense, you have immigration, you have police. And there is no individual who can look at my eye, eyeball to eyeball, and tell me that he don't know who are the criminals and who are conducting criminalities or whatever it is in his local government or in his domain. I had privilege to have in all 773 or 74 local governments for a reason. Between the years of 1999 to the year 2021, to some extent, up till now. So I believe so much that there is no way a criminal can hide that. Criminals have no hideout in Nigeria. Only that you have internal sabotage, you have unorganized security architecture, you have on serious government. You don't have really a responsible
I apologize to interject.
Really it is on responsibility.
Yeah.
If we can have a government that...
Okay, Dr. Get, so I'm sorry, we have to take another commercial break. Sorry about the interjections, but when we come back, we'll continue our conversation. For those of you watching at home, please stay with us. Welcome back. We still have Dr. Hon Ezekiel, security intelligence professional, Chris Olaoluwa Ogumodede, international affairs analyst, with us on the program tonight. We discuss the spate of kidnapping for ransom in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. That's the Federal Capital Territory. Chris Ogumodede, thank you so very kindly for staying with us. I want us to go to the how, but before then, do you agree with those who say, like some of us, that you can't give what you don't have? That if you come to election or to power, maybe as a governor, as a president, as a senator, as a House of Reps member, whoever it is, through using or people using, creating a situation of insecurity to, swear an election your way. Maybe you have boys being released from prison under the guise of prerogative of mercy, criminals to go and then chase voters away, kill political opponents, snatch ballot boxes, and rig an election for you. If you have criminals, in different localities being hired, to rig an election for you, or you have thugs going after voters to beat them, and area boys. If you have police officers using the bullets that taxpayers' money buys for them to rig elections for people who have the power of incumbency or have access to the police. If you have soldiers or military officers being used by people who have access to them and the funds to bankroll those operations, to rig elections for politicians, then that Nigerians should not expect that such a politician can come into power at any kind of level and influence policies, to bring a secure country. Is that theory true? Or should Nigerians still be hopeful of any politician who was, who had people, beating on their behalf because they want to win an election and all I've talked about? Can we still have hope in our political class despite these things we're talking about?
I tend to agree that folks can't give what they don't have. A politician who comes to political power via violence at the ballot box or other forms of malfeasance, will struggle to think of security in the holistic way you described it. That tends to be my view. However, democracy, representative democracy, is such that it's not, democracy isn't left to the political class alone, right? So society, vox populi, can provide upward pressure in terms of what it wants from its political class, what it wants from those who represent it. The consent of the governed is a meaningful concept in representative democracy. So what politicians, what the political elite might want can, of course, be at variance with what the public wants. But the public can also create meaningful pressure on the political class to do the things that it wants. But that will require a rethink of the way we do politics in Nigeria, namely that politics not be restricted to the ballot box. So, folks have got to think about politics in a much more holistic, continuous way. Too many of our political debates are hinged to the electoral cycle, right? So when we have campaigns, when we have election day, inauguration day, everyone goes back to hibernation, right? Until the next cycle of elections. Yes, we might talk from every now and then about issues ranging from security and corruption or whatever, but folks by and large don't take proactive steps to ensure that their demands, which security is a paramount one, to be reflected in the political debates of the day, including among political elites. That has to change. Folks have got to ensure that we all as Nigerians must continue to think about our health, our security, our economy, and all the things that affect our daily lives as continuous. We can't leave them to election day or to politicians alone. This idea that, only the problems that Nigeria faces, including its breakdown in law and order and security, is for politicians alone to deal with, is mistaken. So I share the sentiment, broadly speaking, that, folks can't give what they don't have, but political systems can be bent in ways that different segments of society can make the things that they want reflect in political debates and political.
All right. Interesting. Dr. Isaac, so let's look forward very quickly. I want you in a minute and a half to tell me what we need to see the federal government do differently in 2024 to turn the narrative, starting from Abuja, to make Abuja safe. Let's limit that. This is your answer to Abuja. Number two, what does the FCT Minister Nyesom Wike need to do on his part to make Abuja safe, apart from turning his attention and focus more to Abuja than Rivers State, where he is more focused on? What does he need to do to make Abuja safe? In a minute and a half, please.
He needs to do a root cause analysis to understand even what are the challenges and what are the reasons for security challenges. He needs to improve kind of a surveillance activity, and also need to have an organized intelligence gathering system, and also need to reposition the staffing of all the security agencies and reorganize their coordination and synergy in working, and ensure that at least let's recruit even volunteers from all the political wards in the FCT, go using the polling unit strategy. Let's assume that in each and every polling unit, you engage the youth between the age of 17 to the age of 22, at least 90 per polling unit. If in a political ward, you have 10 polling units, 90 times 10 will give you 900. If in a political ward, even in the government, you have 10 political wards, 900 times 10 will give you 9,000. Let them be among the civilian JTFs, let them be among the vigilante, and let them work harmoniously. That is the engagement of the son of the soil from all nooks and crannies, all polling units and all the political wards of the the FCT area councils that we have. Okay. And also by extension to do the same in the peripheral geographical border with other states. And then that can be replicated if the effect and the impact is seen to all the at least 500 local governments out of 703 local governments that we have.
Thank you, Dr. Getso. So just a quick one. Do we have, Dr. Getso, because of time, do we have a CCTV coverage and surveillance with technology of Abuja? Just a quick one. Right now?
We don't have.
Okay. All right. Well, final word from you, Chris. Okay. I don't think you can hear me, but we're out of time. We have just a minute to go. We just hope that the authorities will do the needful and surprise Nigerians, really, by giving what guests have said they don't think they have. We still have confidence in political leaders to gather the political will to secure Nigeria. I will say that for the Nigerian politician of today, a political leader, governance is the third priority. First priority is security, is politics. Second priority is funding or money. And third priority is governance. If they can move governance to priority number one, some of these issues will be half solved. Dr. Yaoza Getso, thank you so very kindly for your time tonight. Chris Olaoluwa Ogumodede, thank you so very kindly for your time tonight.
Thank you.
And that's the size of our package right here on Politics HQ. My name is Kofi Bartels. You can be sure that you have the analysis of the pressing political issues and the raw truth right here on this program. Join us again tomorrow. Good night.